This is Jimi Hendrix, and this is episode 22. Lead your team on Empowered 360. Hi, I'm James Hendrix. I am a motivational speaker. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I wish to help those that desire more, that desire to enjoy an extraordinary life. I also hope to give you better spiritual and temporal tips to help you overcome the adversities of your day life. You know, I tried to tape this before, and I made some common mistakes. So, if you'll forgive me, we're going into the Empowerment Center. First, we're going to hear from Kirk, Duncan.
I'm here because I want to support you in how your team is functioning. Because if your team could have more self-mastery, you know your team could produce and be able to take you and your organization to a whole new level. Because you know how it is. Seriously, you know how it is. It's because when this happens right here, you got yourself a team member who's at point A and you're saying, let's go to point B. And what does the team member do? They start doing this whole wandering thing, right? They're just like wandering all over the place. And why do they do this? It's because the details of where they're going is unclear. They just don't know where they're going. You may tell them what the plan is, or you might be telling them what the goal is, right? But because you tell them, it doesn't mean it actually got inside their head. You see, you didn't realize this, but being a team leader or a coach, what happens is you literally are a psychologist. you get to be in psychology, because if you want your team to get from point A to point B, you've got to know a few things about psychology. Because just because you tell somebody what to do, it doesn't mean that they're actually going to get here. What you actually want, I know what you want. You want them to do the steps, whatever the steps are. You want them to go in a straight line and to be able to go straight to where you want to go. But you know what you experience? This. It's called craziness. It's called the insanity part of being a leader. And it drives you nuts, because it's like, what's happening? It's like, I thought I gave instructions to everybody, right? But they're way over here on this edge, or they're way over here on this edge. Okay, I know this is what you want, but I know this is what you're experiencing. It's not cool. It's really frustrating, and you can wonder, why are you even doing this? And you sometimes you just don't want to do it anymore. So what's happening? What's happening? Okay, let's talk about the common mistakes so you can figure out, so we can talk about what to do to correct this, so that we can get your team online. And when I say online, meaning not like internet online, I mean like in line. That's a better way to say it, in line. Okay, common mistakes. Let's talk about this. They can't imagine the success because there's no details in their mind. You see, this is psychology. If the person does not have the details in their mind, they can't even imagine it. And you're going to see why in just a moment as I uncover this for you, why that's such a big deal. Second big mistake is that they drift back to their old pattern of living because there's no new pattern to follow. That's what this is. This is a wandering because their mind doesn't even know, it doesn't even comprehend or even ponder on this. And so that's why they're all over the place.
All right. Isn't something how Kirk mentions self-mastery? That is a principle of provident living. You remember back in episode 9, we discussed provident living with Bishop Dave. Well, we're going to bring in somebody who can drive it further. Well, Kirk, Duncan, we had a home front advantage. Let's see how we do on the road with someone that I consider is one of the great in success coaching. And that is Terri Seville-Foy.
Somebody make a statement that made such a profound impact on my life, and this was it. They said somebody else could take the same hand you've been dealt and win. Somebody else could take the same situation, the same problems, the same obstacles that you're faced with right now, and they could succeed. And when I heard that statement, somebody else could take my situation and succeed, it dramatically opened my eyes. And here's why. When I was told that phrase, I had just been handed the position as CEO for Jerry Seville Ministries, and at the time overseeing offices in the USA, Canada, the United Kingdom, Africa, Australia, South Africa, and Singapore. And we actually had a branch office in Botswana, so technically 8 offices. And here I was handed that huge responsibility, never been a leader in that capacity before. I have a degree in French, a minor in communication studies, and somebody said someone else could take the same hand you've been dealt and win. Well, I recently wrote a book called The Leader's Checklist, and this is basically my life in a nutshell of how I became an effective leader. I was in a place of going, what do I do? Where do I start? And hearing a statement like that somebody else could take your situation and succeed, that caused me to think, well, how? What do I do? And immediately I began reading books, and one of the first phrases I ever heard was this: everything rises and falls on leadership. And I thought, everything? Are you sure everything? Then I heard this statement, and I added this in the first part of my book because it is so powerful. Listen to this. This is from John Maxwell's Developing the Leader Within You, and I quoted him in my book. He said that during a sales meeting, the manager was getting on to his staff for how dismally low their sales figures were. He said, I have had just about enough poor performance and excuses from you. He said, if you can't do the job, perhaps there's other people out there who would jump at the chance to sell the worthy products that you have the privilege to share. He said, then he pointed to a newly recruited retired pro football player. He said, hey, if a football team isn't winning, what happens? The players are replaced, right? The question hung heavy for a few seconds. The football player answered, actually, sir, if the whole team's having trouble, we usually get a new coach. Everything rises and falls on leadership. I would read stuff like that, and it would start to scare me that I had that much responsibility on me. Then I heard this story. And it was about how John Maxwell had lunch with a friend who would actually go into resorts when they were starting to fail. They were about to, go under. He would go into these resorts, and he said he would always do 2 things. Listen to this. He said whenever they came into an organization to take it over, they always started by doing 2 things. First, they trained all the staff to improve their level of customer service. And second, they fired the leader. John Maxwell said, what? You always fire him every time? He said, yep, every time. John said, you don't interview him and find out if he'd really been a good leader? He said, nope, if he'd been a good leader, the organization wouldn't be in the mess it's in. So I'm reading stuff like that, and fear is coming all over me, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. This organization's going to succeed or fail because of me, my leadership? Then I heard T.D. Jakes say, if you have a pastor who has the capacity to lead 100 people and you give him a church of 1,000 people, he will lose 900 people. At the same time, he said if you have a pastor who has the capacity to lead 1,000 people, you give him 100 people, he will gain 900 people.
So there you go. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Okay? Now I'm going to talk to you for a little while. I know one of the things I've neglected to say, and I know Bishop Dave would have said the same thing. You remember episode 19 where we talked about what's a family? I think one of the things that helps me is that in my congregation in and of itself, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is in many ways like a family to me. And see, leadership starts with you lead yourself, and then if you have a family, you are leading a family, and then it branches out to different spans of organization. And so that's why it's important that you have the skills that you need for leadership. And I agree with Kirk Duncan about psychology. Don't get me wrong. But I think some of the tools and the trades I learned in earning my bachelor's degree in political science is a good idea. Because, psychology is cool, don't get me wrong. But it's my firm belief, and this is just from taking the Intro to Psychology course. It can be somewhat of a reactive field. And when I talked about this, I said, we're going to give the reactive culture that we live in the boot. Because we can't be reactive and effective leaders, right? We can't do that. It's just not even something that you can begin to even fathom as possible. Now, I agree with Kirk Duncan about one thing. Well, several things. One thing is, you can't have a leader that just says, go do this. But they don't give the details of the organization goals. I could give a specific example in my own personal life. But for the sake of not being reactive, I'm going to give it in hypotheticals, okay? Okay. Stephanie runs a software company on behalf of her sick husband. At first, things were doing well. She was trying to run it as best as she could. But things started to go downhill. She started hiring some employees that had attitudes of slipshod service and the like. And then from there, her attitude began to sour, and she started lording over her employees and fellow leaders. Needless to say, things don't go so well for her. Because all she's doing is going around saying, just do this. And if it's substandard, well then, that's her fellow subordinates' fault or the employee's fault. Guys, we can't do that. We gotta learn how to better lead our team. I hope that you enjoyed listening to Empower 360. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and become a part of the Empower 360 community. This is Jimmy Hendrick reminding you, do what others don't so you can be what others won't. Do what others don't so you can have what others can't. Choose, act, and pursue happiness. God bless you.